Hi, everyone. It's Janice, host of the Divorcing Religion podcast. Thanks for tuning into my show, whether you're joining me on audio or video. I've heard from some folks recently who have told me just how much the show has meant, and some of them have even found it not only to be life-changing, but life-saving, as they felt there was no one else who understood what they were going through, and they found the Divorcing Religion podcast, and they started feeling encouraged. Please help me keep my show on the air. Become a member by clicking the join button on the Conference on Religious Trauma YouTube channel. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. And this is part of a special series that I'm doing called Strong Women in Secular Spaces. And I felt especially compelled to do this series in light of the recent election in the United States, which saw convicted felon and predator, racist and misogynist, who returning to highest place in the land. And I am concerned for my sisters in the United States. And I wanted them to know that in Canada and around the world, we see you and we care about you. And this is why I have invited a woman that I see as a very strong person, a strong woman in secular spaces, my friend, Alice Greczyn. She's an actress. She's an author. I hope you've read her book, Wayward. If not, I recommend that you run out and get it immediately after we've done this show. It's a fantastic memoir. And she also has really a pretty amazing website, Dare to Doubt, for people who are doubting and having questions about the religious path that they've been on. So with all that, welcome, my friend. It's wonderful to see you again.
Oh, wonderful to see you too, Janice. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, tell me a little bit about how you've been doing. You seem busy, like you're always up to something. What are you up to these days? Are you acting? Are you writing? What's going on? Maybe you're just relaxing.
No, relaxing is a word that I look forward to maybe in another couple years. No, I've been working hard. Acting auditions have indeed picked up, but mostly I've been doing a little bit more writing, and I've really been pouring a lot into my business online, which is interesting and can be a little polarizing, but I'm comfortable to talk about it, and I do it. And you have me as a guest anyway. So I'm a creator on Playboy and OnlyFans, and that puts me in the adult content space. But I'm not a porn creator. I love porn. I have nothing against it. But really what my pages have evolved into, because I don't offer X-rated content, is more of a girlfriend experience type of page, where really it's like any other online community like Patreon. And I have some of the most incredible chats. And you mentioned our recent presidential election here in the States. And I have to say, the chats that I've been having on OnlyFans from men in America, Republican men, and Democratic men, international men, have just been so interesting. And it is such a privilege to be able to connect with such diverse viewpoints about so many deep topics. And so that's what's been taking up my time. I've been putting a lot into my business. I've been working on some other side projects that aren't quite ready to be announced yet, but yeah, that's what I do.
Well, can you go a little bit deeper into that about the girlfriend experience? So this is men will connect on the sites that you mentioned, and you interact with them in a girlfriendish kind of way. Is that what it is?
So I rebranded to the courtesan experience because a lot of people, myself included, had a few qualms with the word girlfriend. I'm happily engaged and I'm open about that. I never lie about that, and they know it. So But the girlfriend experience, or GFE, is kind of industry shorthand for what I offer, which is really my time and availability and my chatting. Yes, there's some content there too, but I feel like there's a common misperception people have of all online sex workers or all creators on OnlyFans, and it's if they say prostitution is the oldest profession, It's also true, the old adage of a lot of men really just want to talk. They're not even interested in the content. They're not even interested in the body. They just want a girl to ask, like, how was your day? They just want someone to wish them happy birthday. And when you think of the type of man who pays for this type of interaction, who pays to access an adult site, who do you imagine does that? Is the question that I like to ask whenever I do get pushback, because it immediately dispels a lot of sexual ableism in our society. I have a lot of subscribers who are physically disabled, who have a mental disorder or a learning disorder, a speech impediment, men who have a really hard time in real life with dating and girls. And they, like anyone else, also have desire and physical and emotional needs. And just to be told, you look so handsome today, or how was it last weekend? How was your daughter's game? Just someone to give a shit about their life. And so that's what I really provide. And I've been told more than once that they'll jokingly call me their therapist. I am not a therapist. I am not a licensed counselor or a coach or anything like that. But it really is an honor to just be able to hold that kind of space in someone's life and give them a place where they can feel cared for and heard and someone to vent to and challenged. I identify as a sapiosexual, so a lot of my discussions, just like on Instagram or on my blog or anywhere else, can get very intellectually heated. And I love agreeing to disagree. I love having an invigorating debate. And so I get a lot out of it too. But it really has been a very unique lens through which to look at the current events in our world lately, because I'm on the daily interacting with hundreds of people from so many different walks of life. Women too. I do have women subscribers too, and non-binary subscribers. So I get such a swath of opinion and perspective that really I find enriching, and to know that I get to enrich their lives back is just, it's a very fulfilling little career that I've unexpectedly found myself in. I was just doing it for fun and pinup cosplay, and now it's evolved into this whole other thing. But I'm having
I feel like anyone who has the opportunity to interact with you is very fortunate, Alice, because you are so thoughtful and compassionate and kind and intelligent. I mean, I'm always happy when I get to talk to you and reading the things that you've written as well. Just so thought provoking, very very interesting, and it's so fun hearing you express your joy over this new career direction. I have another lady that I know, Nicole Mitchell, and she talks in a similar way. And Nicole was a pastor, and now she's quite a successful OnlyFans creator. And she also shared about how valuable she finds the interaction with so many different people, and that people are just hungry for connection in this day that we live in. Like you said, men just want to know someone gives a shit about them. And women also want to know that someone cares what's going on. So I feel like it's quite a significant service that you and Nicole and others are offering. So way to go. I'm wondering how your mother took, just knowing that you come out of a Christian family, that's your background, very Christian. What was it like for your family, or has this even come up in conversation with them?
Let's see, I've been on Playboy now for almost 2 years. It was January of 2023, so right into the new year that I joined. And before I did, I texted my parents and I was like, hey, didn't you want you guys to find out about this through Instagram? I'm working with Playboy now. And they weren't really surprised, because I've been acting and modeling ever since I was a teenager. And that has already involved topless content and bikini and lingerie type stuff. And so they're not too shocked or surprised. My dad, the only thing he really had to say was like, well, just be safe, be careful, make sure you're being secure. And then my mom, at first, my mom was a little bit like, she kind of had the perspective. She's like, why are you letting men objectify you? And I was like, Mom, I am not capitalizing off of men objectifying my body. Like, I don't view my body as the object of monetization here. I view men's lust and their need for connection as a service opportunity that I am all too delighted to provide within my comfort zone. I have my boundaries. My mom is very old fashioned in the sense that she thinks men should always pay for the dates, and like she's a little bit more like that. I'm very like, oh no, I'm paying for my own food on the date, especially if it's a first date and I don't know you yet. So it's kind of funny when I spoke to her about it in that language. I was like, Mom, they're paying for the pleasure of my company. She was like, oh, as they should. And now my mom is my biggest fan. She's so supportive of it, and my dad too. Like they don't quite understand everything or why me and some of my siblings like to do the things that we do. What parent does, I suppose, but they are so supportive. And at the end of the day, they're just happy if we're happy and if we're being safe. And I think they get a tickle out of it. We all get a tickle out of it because people who are familiar with my story know that I left evangelical Christianity for good. I became an atheist when I was 21. I'm 38 now. My parents have also moved away and evolved in their faith and spiritual beliefs. And so it's not quite the scandal that it might have been if I were 21 years old doing this. That would have been a different story. But overall, I'm really one of the lucky ones. I've heard a lot of stories of creators who lost a lot of family members and friends when they started doing this. Maybe I think because I'm already in the entertainment world, it was kind of a more natural. Maybe a lot of people saw it coming, kind of progression. But yeah, here I am, and I don't really. I've been very fortunate to feel so seen and supported by so many people in my life.
Right. And now you're engaged. Also, congratulations. And so obviously your partner is supportive of
Yes.
this career move as well.
Yes, he is. He is. He's a very talented photographer and cinematographer, and so it's kind of like one of those perfectly convenient relationships where I was not looking for a photographer partner, but he shoots a lot of my content, and we have so much fun shooting together and working together. And we're actually one of my side projects is we're starting to shoot for other creators too, art directing, styling, shooting, editing. And so that's been really fun too. But yeah, he's very supportive. He also grew up in Christianity and left, and we're both just kind of like, look at us now. We have fun. You gotta have fun with it.
Yes, yeah. I'm married to a man who also understands about religious trauma that's in both of our backgrounds, and really makes a difference being able to connect with someone who has some understanding of the damage that the church can do, that religious beliefs can do. So I am so happy for you. That it's just exciting. What about your siblings? Any pushback from them, or do they just support you because you're their sister and go for it?
Yeah, no pushback from them at all. No, like I wish I had a story of like someone who really had a hard time digesting it, but no, I think a lot of people just really aren't that surprised, maybe just because they know me, and it's like, well, of course I was going to do this eventually. It's so much fun. I love to play dress up, and I talk a lot about purity culture and how one of the paths that I personally found, this obviously does not apply to everyone, but one of the paths to healing that I personally found in my own journey of recovering from purity culture was embracing my sensuality, was pole dancing, was topless modeling, was reclaiming my agency and my body and my power more than anything. And so it was, it took me a few years, I think, to join OnlyFans. I want to say it's been around since 2016 or something, the first year of the last Trump presidency. But it's, it's losing so much of its stigma. And there's a lot of people who are on there now, and you really can make of it what you want. You don't even have to show. There's cooking shows on there. There's like workout shows on there. You don't have to do anything spicy or adult. But I like to do a little bit of spice. Nothing super explicit or X-rated, just because that does not bring me joy. But I subscribe and support other creators who do, and they love it. You mentioned Nicole Mitchell. I'm familiar with Nicole. I actually signed up to take one of her workshops next month, so I'm excited to connect with her more. And she and I do share a very similar ethos in the way that we approach our work on these platforms. And I think we also probably tend to attract a crowd of gentlemen primarily who are religious trauma informed. I can't tell you how many subscribers I have who heard me on a podcast or read my book or saw me speak at a conference, and, they're ex-Catholic, ex-Mormon, Hindu, there's like people from so many different faith backgrounds who have resonated with some degree of my story. And it's really just the best conversations. I wish there wasn't such a stigma about it, because I'd love to make it more inviting to everyone to partake in these conversations that I get to have there. And so maybe I'll extend onto something more like Patreon in the future, especially if the Trump administration is successful in banning porn. The entire trajectory of my life is going to change. But I'll find a way to just utilize whatever comes to really just keep doing the work that I've been doing, which is just being vulnerable and sharing my story. I get to connect with and invite so many other people to share theirs. And
I'm excited for you to interact with Nicole. You guys remind me of each other because you're both very warm and very inviting people. I come away from our conversations just feeling warm and fuzzy, like I'm so glad that we had the chat. So I think you will enjoy each other. And Nicole also is going to be speaking at my event next May 23rd to 25th in Seattle. Nicole will be speaking at the Shameless Sexuality Life After Purity Culture Conference. So I encourage people, hurry and get your tickets. They're on sale now, early bird special. Go to shamelesssexuality.org. And I say, yes, that is short for orgasm. And then you will never forget shamelesssexuality.org. So go there and get your tickets, because that's going to be a wonderful, spicy, fun event for people in Seattle. And what you just mentioned, that the fellow who's going to be resuming his position in the White House, with the Project 2025, which is absolutely horrifying, deeply triggering for many of us who have fled Christianity and are greedily taking back our autonomy after having it been denied for however many years we were part of the religion. And now it seems that religious zealots, white Christian nationalists are marching in and taking control. And one thing on their agenda is to ban porn, which I'm like, frankly, that's hilarious, because good luck. Right?
Right.
But it's frustrating, and it's kind of scary. And so people have to be ready to pivot, people in the industry that you're working in. So are you already making some contingency plans that way?
Yes, making contingency plans. I have my blog on Substack. I have my Instagram. So I have ways that people, like if OnlyFans were to close down tomorrow or Playboy were to shut down tomorrow, I have ways that people can still get a hold of me to see where I might go next. I would imagine that platforms like Patreon, which prohibit explicit content. They allow toplessness, but they don't allow anything very explicit. So sites like that might be a little bit more safe. So that's probably where I would go. OnlyFans has banned adult content before. It was short-lived. I don't even think they banned it for 2 weeks, but it was short-lived. And part of the reason is a lot of banks and payment processors do not want to have anything to do with anything potentially risky when it comes to sex and minors and trafficking, and rightfully so. I understand that. It's really interesting talking with subscribers in red states that have already enacted ID verification laws for users as well as creators. Creators, it's a very intensive multi-day process to be verified that you say you are, you're of legal age and you're consenting, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like there are already great safeguards in place. There's always room for improvement, but now there's subscribers who do it. And it just kind of shows a preview of what could happen should it become like a nationwide porn ban. It's just going to go underground. People in those red states who don't want to upload their driver's license, they just use VPNs. And it's like, I don't know, it's hard to uh, if it does become illegal to create as well as consume, there won't be an OnlyFans anymore. So their VPN won't make a difference if people like me, who are not willing to go black market, dark web to do this sort of thing, are no longer online. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting time, and part of me really wants to think and hope that a lot of Project 2025's more extreme measures, and the banning of pornography is just one small thing of a big, deeply concerning manifesto. There's other, I would argue, far more important issues in that horrible document that need to be more readily combated. But that is one of them, and I view it in a broader scope. It's another attack on women. It's another attack on anyone who's not a straight, white, married man. And there's a lot there, but I'm hoping that Trump himself, the dude's not anti-porn. Stormy Daniels just says it like, no. So I'm hoping he's just using the Christian vote and telling them a little bit of what they want to hear and stringing them along, but has zero intention of actually enforcing some of these more ridiculously theocratic things. That said, though, my deepest concern, and this is what's been very difficult for a lot of other people to understand, when I came out publicly on Instagram and said, hey, the Trump administration wants to ban porn, they're like, Trump doesn't, he has nothing to do with Project 25, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I said administration. I did not say Trump himself. I'm not going to speak for Trump. His name was not listed as an author, but we know he appointed over 140 people who were the authors. And that is my deepest concern, is that Trump and his short-sightedness and willingness to dole out favors in exchange for power will once again appoint people in positions of power that will have long-lasting ramifications that'll far outlive his next presidency. So that's my biggest concern with that. Trump, I just, like you said, the one, it's like, do we even have to name him? Whatever, but he's honestly not my biggest concern. It's the people around him that concern me far more.
Yes. And it's so unfortunate. It's not only the United States who will, bear the results of his poison fruit. It's, Canada, certainly being your neighbor, we're feeling pretty terrified over here. But even last time we know he was in office, it was so jarring and so distasteful for the world community. Large. And yeah, he doesn't play well with others. He is a malignant narcissist, among other things. And he is someone who feels that he must have it all. He must take it all. And other people need to feel the brunt of his, what's success for him is putting down others and making sure they don't have a chance. And that's just cruelty. That's cruelty. Yeah. When we see people doing that, and to have a government official, the highest position in the land and potentially the most powerful country in the world, it's just upsetting. It's frustrating. My husband is from the United States, and so we followed the election closely from the start. And it was exhausting. And I didn't let myself hope until the end, when everyone was saying, it's so close, it's razor thin, it's going to be so close. And I was thinking, oh boy, maybe Kamala has a chance. And then you see the things were not even that close. I mean, in some ways they were. It does come down to the electoral college nonsense, but I just felt so crushed. We both did. The next couple of days, we hardly even spoke. It was like the grief and the shock just slogging through. What do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? And we're not even in the United States. We're in Canada. So around the world, I think people are concerned and feeling some of the weight of this, and concerned about what's to come. And some very wealthy people already have their passports and their plans, and they don't even plan on staying. They're going to leave. But there are so many more people for whom that's not an option, and they don't want to abandon their tree in its time of need.
Yeah. No, I totally understand all of that. I know I have friends who left the last time after the 2016 win, who now live in Canada, actually. And yeah, I've been looking into secondary citizenship for years now, well before Trump. I've been looking into it for about over a decade. But it is interesting to see how to be living at a time where I'm such a history lover, and it's so interesting to be aware the older I get of like, oh, this is how borders change. This is how empires fall. This is how governments arise. This is how new party movements form. It's been one of my coping mechanisms to just zoom out really far. Otherwise, I get too paralyzed and heavy with like fear, anxiety, and grief. And I do allow myself to process that and acknowledge it. I took a couple days off, I think I took Wednesday and Thursday off after the results came out, because I just wanted to like reset, collect myself, learn, better understand. And for me, when I feel like I have an understanding, it's not that it mitigates my disappointment, but it does mitigate it helps neutralize my emotional distress about something. So the more I feel I can understand, oh, here's how this happened, here's why people voted this way, and the more I understand that, the calmer I feel. It doesn't change my concern and my own personal opinions about it, but it does change, I suppose, like the context of zooming out and being like, oh, okay, here's the trajectory of the United States. Here's where it could go. Here's the pattern that it's similar to that happened however many centuries ago before in this other place. For some reason, that really comforts me. It doesn't necessarily change what is, but that type of understanding gives me a sense of groundedness of my place in the human saga. And this is just history. It's cyclical. And
Yeah.
I don't personally observe evidence that things get better or worse. I observe more that technology changes and humans kind of stay the same. As long as we're resource needing, biologically driven mammals, which that could change. We could, go full on cyborg pretty soon here. But as long as that's the case, we're always going to be competitive and want to impose our will and morality on other people. And I just don't see any evidence to the contrary. So it's not surprising. And I've been choosing to just be very grateful for the freedom and liberty and just life that I have gotten to enjoy up until this point, because I don't know what the future holds. No one does. And there's dark times all over the world, and we just take turns on this carousel of light and dark through different places in time. And I'm like, okay, so it's my place in time's turn. Probably, maybe, I don't know. And I still have it pretty fucking good, So relative. This is just what I do to self-soothe. I'm not saying that this philosophy needs to be helpful to anyone else. And I can understand why it can be very upsetting to other people especially people who have more fight in them than I have. But it's not that I don't have fight. It's just I fight in a way that it feels good for my nervous system.
Right. And we only have so much bandwidth at any given time. And I thought it was interesting to discover that the 1820s, it was very similar. A lot of the same things that are going on now were going on then. And so they were against immigration. They were coming down hard to try and restrict women from having any rights. They were pushing religion very hard. Racism, certainly a big thing. Misogyny, all these, even pandemics, just all sorts of things were similar, and that we see going on now. One thing that I actually found oddly comforting, this fellow I follow named Robert Reich, very astute politician in the United States. He's been involved in politics for decades. And after the election results, he has a show called Coffee Clutch, and he was on there speaking with his other co-hosts, and he said he doesn't think that all the people who voted for Trump are necessarily racist and misogynist and homophobic and all that. He said what he thinks happened was the establishment hates Trump. So anytime Trump does something stupid and offensive, the different magazines and they come out against him, and he's so bad, he's this and he's that. And a lot of the people who are really struggling and marginalized in society right now, they say, "Oh, if the establishment hates him, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He must be my guy," and completely discounting the fact that he lies all the time and has said and done all these terrible things. And when Mr. Reich put it that way, I felt I could breathe at least a little bit easier, because my fear, I fear violence rising in the United States. I don't want to see that. No one wants to see that. When he puts it that way, I think, okay, maybe they're not, just all a bunch of hotheads that hate women and whatever else. They just mistakenly feel that they have a connection with him because they think he's anti-establishment, even though he's a billionaire or whatever he is. So, yeah, it's a frustrating time and a hard week.
Yeah. No, what you just said is, I totally agree. And I think that there's so many ways to look at it, but I personally know Trump supporters who are not stupid. They're so well educated. They're secular. They're LGBTQ and or LGBTQ friendly. They're racial minorities. There's such diversity in the Republican Party and among Trump's fan base that is not misogynistic or racist. There's a lot of people who do not fit that stereotype. And when I've had deep discussions with them and asked them, help me understand here, what are you saying that I'm not? What is the thing? A lot of it truly is economic from the feedback I've been getting. And the other thing that I personally observe is, and I'm sure you and probably viewers have seen this going on social media, Trump sounds like a real person. Love him or hate him, he sounds like a real person. We know his sense of humor. He speaks in common language. And people, when I was watching the election on NBC, as it was unfolding, they were interviewing a lot of people, especially young men who suddenly came and they're like, what brought you here? What made you decide to vote? The Joe Rogan podcast. And Kamala Harris's decision not to do anything she could to make that happen, I think, in my opinion, was a huge mistake, because it could have humanized her. It could have made her sound like a human for once, because I don't think she sounds like a human. I voted for her, but I wanted her to win. But there's such a disconnect between the language of the working class people and the elites, the so-called elites, who they just don't identify with the same way they can somehow identify with a billionaire like Donald Trump. And so I think that is a big aspect too. The people are so tired of being condescended to and being told that they're a racist bigot if they just have a difference of opinion. It's the whole cancel culture thing, which I am very against, and it's just another form of fundamentalism, in my opinion. And I think that we're seeing a backlash to that from people who are not racist or bigoted. They just don't want to be lumped in with that, and because they are, fine, if the shoe fits, if you're going to think this about me anyway, I'm going to go over here. And that just makes human sense to me. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying I like it or support it. I understand it and I have compassion for it, because it's like, I get it.
I really appreciate your response there to people with such different political views than you have. When you said, help me understand. Help me understand, because I'm missing, something's getting lost in translation here. What exactly is it that draws you, that is appealing to you about this person? Trump definitely got in there and I think was pitting men against women. And that was, I really was very concerned by the number of women who did seem to vote against their own reproductive rights, against that of their daughters and granddaughters. That to me is like the hardest thing to swallow out of all of it, and yet it's done. That's what they voted for. So it's a concern. But you responding in that way, just saying, "Well, tell me more. Tell me about it and what you think." That's such a beautiful response. And when we think in terms of people being involved in cults and being sucked into cults, because there are people who believe that MAGA is a cult, um,
Mhm.
and they feel like they have lost their loved ones to this cult. How can they ever get them back? And you can't shake someone and wake them up from this. Really, the only thing we can do is try and keep lines of communication open by asking questions like you did, or saying, well, help me understand, because I don't understand it. uh, and I say that recognizing that sometimes people have got to put very firm boundaries in place. If
Yeah.
they feel their mental health is in danger, if the other person is toxic, is prone to abusing them in some way, no, then you don't have to maintain ties with those people. But for those of us who can handle it, maybe who aren't as closely involved in the situation, that can be a reasonable step to take, to ask them to help us understand, instead of saying, "Why did you do this thing?" Just say, "Help me understand what difference that just those tones of voice can have."
It's huge. I mean, I found myself navigating the political and social justice spaces very much with the advice in mind that I've learned from cult experts and people who help cult survivors. Because to me, and this is what I experienced in Christianity, and especially when I'm talking with Christian Republican MAGA types, it's like what I grew up believing was that persecution was affirmation that I was on God's side. So why on earth would I want to make someone feel persecuted, push them further onto that side? That's always been for me a very clear. And it's also just human nature. You know, when someone comes at you with like condemnation and shame and outrage, very few of us just immediately be like, oh, you're right. I see your point of view now. Most of us double down and get defensive and feel attacked. And it's like, oh, no, you're definitely not a safe person. I'm going to go back over here with my people, you know? And so it's like, but I also understand it's human nature equally to have an emotionally outraged response to stuff that seems so deeply, deeply wrong. How are we not all on the same page about this? So I understand these. And I know you're someone that's also very practiced in being able to hold two seemingly opposing truths in one lens, but it's hard to it takes a lot of self-restraint. I'm not saying that I don't struggle or that this comes easily for me, but I do try to remember what I've learned in a lot of cult recovery things and just psychology, which is like, I don't want to alienate and push away the people whom I would most like to invite to see my own perspective or this person's perspective. And so I have to be willing to see theirs too, and make them feel safe to share that
Yeah.
truthfully. And absolutely what you said, if I could take a highlighter pen to it, I would. This does not mean that I advocate or put myself in positions where I'm with someone that not only has differing views, but is actively antagonistic, belittling, or abusive to me about them in some way. No, that's not what I'm advocating for. But if it's like a family member, a loved one, a friend, someone who you sense good faith in, someone who does care and respects you, and you guys just have some differences here. If you're being treated in a way that you feel like, I actually am safe, and maybe I don't want to have this conversation, but let me try. I think that we need more of that personally. And that's what I've consistently been trying to advocate for in my years as a public atheist. Because one thing that I observed, and I know we've probably talked about this before, was I saw a funny meme that encapsulated it best, that said something like, cheers if you left a religious cult and did not join a political one after, because it's a very natural swing to leave religion and find yourself in a political activist fundamentalism mindset. And it's hard to recognize. We don't want to admit that we fell for something again. We don't want to admit it's a dogma. Of course it's more righteous. Of course it's grounded in science and truth. And so it's more valid and all these things. But the human interplay is what I'm honing in on. And I do this myself too. Like I hold myself accountable to my own standards of integrity, of like, recognizing when I am being the thing that I don't want to be, when I'm being dogmatic, when I'm being combative, when I'm being condescending. And I have my people who I could just rant and let it out with and be like, oh my God, these people are so fucking stupid. We all need to have that sometimes, But then I also do that to myself, like, oh my gosh, how could I not have seen this? I'm the one who's kind of an idiot right now. And I say that affectionately. I don't think I'm an idiot. I don't think most people are idiots. I think we all operate according to the value system that facilitates our survival.
Right, right. And we do tend to be, I think, a lot of us emotionally driven. We can have really strong emotional reactions to things. I know that it feels so hard for me. I'm constantly searching for the middle. I feel like I'm such an extreme person in my personality, the things I'm drawn to, from way over here to I couldn't just be a run of the mill Christian. I had to be a head covering, no TV, whatever, diehard, fundy kind of Christian. And that's where I felt comfortable. And I look at people like my husband, who's much more just moderate in general. And I'm like, what must it be like to go through life and just consistently like stay in the middle? I think that's very impressive because the middle is hard for me to find. One thing that I do, a line in the sand that I have, has to do with dehumanizing other people and using dehumanizing language. And I've heard it on the right and I've heard it on the left. And that is terrifying to me because that really reeks of Nazi Germany and the horrible things that were done then to the Jewish people. So that's something that I am very aware of, and I do not use dehumanizing language. But I
Yeah.
look at then repealing not only women's reproductive rights, but their bodily autonomy and their medical records. Those are nothing is supposed to be more private than that. How you vote is supposed to be private, and whatever your health records, that's between you and your physician. Women in the United States, they don't have that anymore. And that is horrifying to me. And I fear that with Project 2025 and Christian nationalists and overturning Roe v. Wade, that women are being dehumanized if they're only seen as their only value as being baby carriers and having babies and procreating, and that's it. And I had Margaret Atwood, the author of Handmaid's Tale, on my show in January, and it was pretty chilling. I mean, there are a lot of parallels in her fiction story about the land of Gilead and what is going on in the United States. Now, she wrote that book decades ago, and she said she took every example in there from real life situations around the world in different theocracies. And so that's the concern. Is the United States marching towards or sliding towards theocratic rule? Boy, I hope not.
I'm right there with you. There have been so many times recently that I keep thinking of two scenes in the Handmaid's Tale TV show on Hulu. And one scene that comes to mind is I'm fascinated by this character, the character of Serena, who's the wife of the commander. She used to be a writer, and you and I can both relate because we write. She used to be a writer. And she helped draft the new policy to make Gilead, to turn the United States into the theocracy known as Gilead. And then it's as though she didn't realize that these rules would apply to her. And there's a scene where she disobeys her husband, and he chops off her finger. And it's like, did you forget that this is what you advocated for and drafted and fought for? And now when I see a lot of Christian Trump supporting women or women who are behind Project 2025, I'm like, are you guys Serenas? Like, are you just like, is this okay? All right. Oh, time will tell. And I keep telling myself, don't get paranoid, stay calm right now. No one knows the future, maybe it won't. But the other scene that haunts me from that show is a flashback scene to when Gilead started. And the two of the lead female characters go to a cafe and they're trying to pay for their food and their credit cards don't work because suddenly women cannot have access to their own bank accounts. And I was doing research, I'm sure you know this too, but like, we women in the United States anyway have only had the right to have our own mortgage, our own deed in our name, our own bank account, without a male signature since like the 70s. That's like in my mom's lifetime.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's like,
in my lifetime. Yeah,
and so
crazy.
I feel like people who tell me, "Oh, you're being paranoid," like they wouldn't get rid of women's rights. And like, you forget how recently I even had this right, and like
Mhm.
how fragile it is and how quickly it could be undone. And I'm with them. I want to believe that I'm being paranoid and fear mongering, all these things. Like, please let that be the case. I would love to be very, very wrong. But when you grow up in a Christian theocratic movement, like I did, or when you've belonged to it in some sort of way, these people are planned, they are sincere, they are organized, they are mission driven. You cannot compete with eternity. That's what all religions have in common, is like this afterlife eternity thing. And it's like, or reincarnation, whatever you call it, it all hinges on what happens after we die. And no real world thing can compete with the holy calling of that. And so it's like, I know it intimately. I was part of youth groups that were very politically active and wanted a Christian theocracy, although we didn't call it then. We just called it bringing America back to God, as though it was ever with God in the first place. It wasn't. So it's interesting to having been on both sides now, and those Handmaid's Tale scenes haunt me. And I think Margaret Atwood is she it doesn't surprise me at all that she drew from real life experiences. And I hope that it stays fiction here in the US. It's not fiction in so many parts of the world, but we've been lucky here in the Western world. And hopefully it stays that way.
Yes, yes, and Margaret actually wrote another book after The Handmaid's Tale. I wish I could remember the name of it. If I remember, I'll put it in the show notes. And it's the continuation and the ending from The Handmaid's Tale. It is beautiful, incredibly well written. I cried at the end of it. I was so glad I read it. So please look for Margaret's next book that kind of caps off The Handmaid's Tale. It's well worth reading. I hope they also make a movie out of it. So it's the same characters in there, so very recognizable. So that is something that I recommend. Yeah, so it sounds like you're doing your best not to let fear run away with you. You're trying to be practical about things. You're focusing on what you can do, that can make a difference in your life. Self-care. Oh, people are so sick of that word, but I'm telling you right now, when times are tough, if it's feeling hard to get out of bed every day and just feeling doom and gloom, this is really a time when people do need to be practicing self-care and reaching out to trusted friends for comfort. There's something to be said for that. And if you feel good sitting, in your fuzzy robe and fuzzy slippers with hot chocolate, watching, Christmas type movies or whatever, please treat yourself to that. If that's what feels good and that's what's going to help you get through the next little while. And I'm sure there will be some level of strategizing and organizing that does take place, and so people can listen and consider if those are things that they want to participate in. But women, you are strong. We are strong. We are creative. We are resourceful. We are courageous. And I don't want us to forget that in this time when it feels like others are trying to take our rights away from us. I don't know if you have any thoughts along those lines yourself.
I think you summarized that really well. I think just the last thing is, when it does feel safe and sincere for you, for me, I call it small work. I guess it's like the small work is having conversations and asking questions. And I've just through my OnlyFans sites, played a role in changing men's voting decisions just through the conversations that I would have. And that's like, I don't blast about it on social media. I don't have an agenda, but just through sincere, earnest dialogue and endeavoring to understand where someone's coming from and being willing to share links and not just snap, do your own research. Man. It's like, no, if you're trying to get people to see your point of view, have it ready. And I think that when you have the capacity and after you have your hot cocoa time and your mac and cheese binge watch, when you have the capacity and you have the desire, if you do, to reach out to someone with a different perspective, don't hold back because you're scared of dining with the enemy or entertaining thoughts that you shouldn't even deign to look at. Like, I think there's such a fear that I observe with a lot of people of even being willing to listen to another perspective or platform, God forbid, another perspective. But I think that where you can and want and feel safe to, that to me really is where a lot of the hard but small unseen work is. And I don't think that that should just apply to women either. I think that applies to everybody. I don't mean to add on to, women's unseen labor. but yes, I think that self-care and self-permissiveness, hand in hand, I think can go a long way. They have for me in my life. And
yes.
I like what they can.
Yeah. And what you just said, the whole idea of listening, being willing to listen, being able to listen. We don't listen to agree, but we do listen to understand, hopefully. And so if we can approach each other that way, which I know is super hard. If you're feeling triggered, that's not the time to do it, and not necessarily even approaching others with any agenda. It's not that I'm going to make them understand, but with the agenda of, I hope to come away from this conversation having a better understanding of this person that I'm speaking with, and that's adulting, to a pretty deep level. And right now we may not be feeling much like that. I do encourage people also, if they're really longing for community in these times. You and I left our religious communities, and that can kind of feel like it leaves a gaping hole. There are many humanist communities across the United States and Canada. There are also groups like the Oasis Network and Sunday Assembly, and those are pretty much humanist groups that people just want to get together and enjoy each other, uplift each other, encourage each other, and it has nothing to do with religion at all. There's even some singing that goes on in those groups. Maybe they're singing the Beatles songs or whatever songs. I really miss singing with other people. So I encourage people to take care of themselves that way too. Reach out, see what's in your community that you might be able to be a part of. And that's pretty much it. That's all I've got for today on this topic. How can people find you, Alice?
I'm most active on Instagram, just at Alice Greczyn, my name. And then in my link in bio, you'll find my blog and all of my other links, but that's the best place to find me. As there's a link to my book there too, I think, for anyone who's interested. But Janice, thank you again so much for having me. And I just want to say, I love that you have a hard time being in the middle. And I love that you go so hard in on what you do, because I really observe that we really need all types of people with different thresholds of tolerance and passion. And I appreciate that you admire and can understand what goes into being a little bit more of a moderate centrist in some ways. But for what it's worth, I love your extremeness and I love your passion. And love how you just dive in so with so much heart. You were just such a walking heart, and I love that about you. So thank you again,
my friend.
Yes.
I appreciate that. That's so nice. I feel very seen in this. Thanks, Alice. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this part of the special series, Strong Women in Secular Spaces. Take care, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye, everyone.